This is Jeff St Laurent. This is the live Tuesday call. And as I got in my private Facebook group before we get going, I said, this is the epic live Tuesday call because why not make it epic, right? Everything's better when it's epic. So a couple points to note before we get started. Today's topic, it's how to help a client decide on hiring you. And this is a very important topic in terms of, the decision, if the metaphorical decision, because this is when we transition from just helping someone for free on some levels and actually getting paid for what we do. And really, that's the name of the game if we're talking about doing this not as a hobby, but as a full-time business as a coach. So I do record all these calls and I post them in on my university on my website. My website is sellingcoaching.com. If you go to the university, you'll find a plethora, because that's such a cool word to use, a plethora of information there, a lot of the calls, a lot of detailed, valuable content for you. So I help coaches transition to a full-time business, and that's my contribution to helping you out with some great information there. There's a lot there, so what I'd recommend is use that search feature with the university, type in a few keywords, see what pops up, focus your attention on where you deserve your attention, because it's very easy, just like social media, right, to just get lost and then you end up listening to hours worth of stuff, hopefully, but it might not be the right or relevant stuff for you. And it's so important, as I mentor with coaches, is like, stay focused. You've got to stay focused on what's in front of you right now. Don't be trying to run when you haven't even put your shoes on yet, or never mind even tied them. So we got to take it in stages. So to get that university for you, also right on the front page of sellingcoaching.com, I have a great guide for you. It's the ultimate startup guide for new coaches. And I offer it to you, like I say, if you enter your name and email address, you can get my dog. And yes, he's a cute dog, but no, I'm not actually giving you my dog. It's just my cute way of marketing. But I do have a great ultimate startup guide, a resource for you if you want to check that out. And then lastly, I have a great private Facebook group at the top of my website. You'll see a little banner there that says, join my private Facebook group. Go over there, check it out. I recommend that. Whether you decide to join or not, either way, if you come in there, I'll let you in, and we got some great interaction going on there. It's a great space. Really, I use that platform mainly for giving coaches the platform for speaking their message and sharing, what they're doing, and a lot of people use video. I push my mentoring clients, group and or one-on-one, to use video. And that's kind of the medium where it's whether you're advanced and you feel comfortable, or you just have no idea what you're talking about or who you're going after, and it's your first thing. It's just like, get yourself in front of a video camera. It's probably one of the scariest things you could do, but ultimately, if you're going to be successful in your coaching business and do it full time, you've got to be able to speak your message, whether it's live face-to-face, a live call like this, or even on a recorded word, whether it be a podcast, a webinar, or something like that. So utilize those resources that I give to you. And then obviously, if it gets to the place where you're like, oh, I need to want more, I need some guidance, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. I also do some group programs, and you can always reach out to me right through my website, right at the bottom of the Work With Me page. So without further ado, let's rock into this topic today, because the topic being how to help people decide and hiring you. And the reason I bring this topic up is, as I'm working with my mentoring clients, there's a certain phase where this topic becomes important to you. In other words, I'll say it like this: if you're doing the right work, when I say the right work, meaning the work that's getting you in front of people, and you're interacting with those people, not just like at a networking event, but more importantly, like a speaking engagement, a seminar, any version of that, whether it's to 1 or 100 more people, it doesn't matter. But if you're doing the right work and getting in front of people, you're going to be getting people coming up to you saying, hey, tell me more about your coaching. Maybe I want to work with you, or they're asking you questions. If you're doing the right work, that means you're posting videos and or things on social media, etc., getting your word out there, and people are reacting to it. They're commenting, they're liking, they're joining, let's say, your Facebook group, etc., or they're joining your meetup group, and then you're interacting with them because you're reaching out to them and you're saying, hey, I noticed you joined, curious your motivation for joining, right? So you're creating the conversations with people, and then hopefully qualifying them well enough, maybe getting them to complimentary sessions. So now you're getting people to the place where they need to decide, or they have to decide whether either, hey, if they're going to move forward and have a complimentary session with you, or are they going to hire you or not? Because ultimately, that's where you go. And so if you're at this position and this topic's relevant for you, that means you're doing the work. If you're sitting out there listening to this and you're saying like, well, I don't have too much of that going on right now, or I haven't had any of that even yet. It doesn't mean don't listen to this. It just means, well, we've got to get you doing the right work in terms of getting yourself out there. You've got to be speaking on a daily or weekly basis somehow, whether it be a social media platform or live, leveraging those events. Get into my Selling Coaching University and type in speaking engagements or seminars. See what pops out. Start to understand how to get yourself out there. I've got some great resources in there for you so you can get to the phase, then come back to this call and go, okay, now I'm interacting with people and they're becoming wishy-washy, and they can't decide. And so now that we're here, the reason I bring this up and when I say helping people decide, people have challenges deciding. It's a fact. There's a small percent of the population that doesn't have any challenges deciding, and it's not like people have never decided before. However, when it comes to coaching, one of the things that we want to realize is that coaching is something that's extracurricular, meaning it's not like, oh, I need brakes in my car. Like you don't just not buy brakes in your car because hopefully you value you and your family's life or whoever gets in the car. That's a necessity. This is above and beyond. It's like, do they have to hire a coach? No. But they're in a place in their life where maybe something's, I'll just say, bad enough or not good enough. Typically, it's close to, if not rock bottom or somewhere, bouncing along there. Hate to say it, but that's really where people have to get to a lot of times in their world, in whatever area, for them to really be serious about looking into it. Good is the enemy of great, meaning it just, when things are good, there's really no real strong motivation or push necessarily to do something about it. But when things are really bad, then all of a sudden it's like, ugh. And if things are really bad long enough, then I'm sick and tired. And when I'm sick and tired, I might look into something. And that's when you pop up on social media and or your event, and I listen and watch you and I go, damn, this person's good. And now I potentially see you as an option for me, right? So it's getting ourselves out there, but within that space, unless they're just like, some people are just going to move through your system and be like, I'm working with you and hiring you and that's it. And hopefully that's the case. If you take the time to really put yourself out there, that's why I take the time to do these calls every week. That's why I take the time. I talked to you about all my free resources in my university, on my website, sellingcoaching.com, on my Facebook page, my Facebook group, so those things where I interact with people. I give a lot of that value and that education. I call it education-based marketing and helping coaches. And I'm pulling this full circle into what we're talking about, helping people decide, is that as I do that, and the reason why I do that and recommend that as coaches is because what that does is number one, it attracts people into your circle, into your audience, onto your email list, into, let's say, a Facebook group or a platform similar to that, where people can follow you and you can be in front of them on a weekly basis, a daily basis if need be. And what that does is as you begin to help them, like some people said it when they're calling in, it's like, hey, I call into these calls, or I listen to these calls because it's valuable because you're helping me out. And so what that does is that builds value for people and over time. It builds value in them seeing that, wow, this guy or this girl, like they can actually help me. So when that timing's right and they do, take it to the next step, meaning like, hey, let's talk about coaching, let's talk about mentoring, whatever it is for you. There's already a huge value that's there. That actually makes this last process, of actually like, hey, great, where are you at? Why are you looking to work with me? What are you going for? How bad do you want it? Why now? I'm trying to figure out that need and that timing. That's the qualification process. Now it's like, yes, they want it. It's a much more qualified lead. And typically what I find is that my process through there with all the things that I do and that I'm modeling for all of you is it's very smooth, it's very seamless, and it's very rare, like literally in the past 2 years, there's been one person who's come to a comp session that hasn't worked with me, and every single person has hired me, and there's never been any even yeah, I'm ready to go, let's do this, and it's just, that's it. It's just a matter of figuring out how the payment works, and they move forward. And I attribute that to everything I just described. That's why I'm modeling it for you and drawing attention to it. That's why if you're not on my email list or my private Facebook group, get in there. So at a minimum, you can start to see the things that I do. If you're not mentoring with me in my group or my one-on-one, at least you can observe it from the outside So you can start to see it's not the ultimate model, it's not the only model, it's a model that works. Right? There's lots of models out there, and if it's appealing to you, you can start to model it. But either way, I'm sharing that at the beginning of this in terms of helping people decide, is because when you have a model like that that educates people, that keeps you in front of them on a regular basis, it develops relationships with them over time. Even if it's a virtual relationship, you start to get to know that person, and that builds value for their services. Therefore, when it comes to point of decision, when the need and the timing is right, it's a much easier and seamless process. What I found is that most coaches, they don't have that process in place. So they're either, interacting with someone at a networking group, or they're meeting people, et cetera, and they might be asking them questions about, hey, tell me more about your coaching, et cetera. And there's really no necessarily relationship built yet. There's not much foundation there. And sometimes you don't need much foundation. I mean, I've gotten plenty of clients from live events, because that's why I recommend live events. It can build a strong relationship at first. But whenever someone is in a space where they're coming up to you and maybe they're asking more questions, for instance, tell me more about your coaching, or I'd love to work with you, tell me more about that, etc. In order to get to the place of helping them decide, and it's setting the groundwork later on for that decision, that goes back to some of the things I've talked about briefly already, which is that qualification process. And it's really taking the time to really understand, why are they asking? What are they looking for? So many people just answer questions for people, and they say, well, how much does your coaching cost? And it's just like, oh, and then they just start going into prices, or tell me more about your coaching. And then they just start, oh, really? And they just go off talking about their coaching. When in reality it's like, why are you talking about your coaching? That's not helping anyone with anything. You need to basically understand, why are they asking about that? What are they going through in their world right now where this would be, relevant for them? What do they want to hear more about this? And then that can help you understand where they're in that spot. So this game, if you will, I'll call it, of this process from like a lead to maybe someone who has more potential as a potential client, and then to let's say a complimentary session, and then to actually them hiring you, if you will, that game, if you will, if I can label it that, it's all about one thing. And this is going to help you understand of where people are at in their decision-making process. It's understanding where that person is through that process. Where that person is in terms of a couple things. One would be, with what they're going through and how serious they are in wanting to accomplish it. And then the other half of it is how they're viewing you in that, and helping them facilitate them achieving that process. Because everyone, if they have a challenge, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's how bad do they really want to do something about this challenge? And then based on what they know about you, whether it's very little to, let's say, a lot, meaning they've been in your database for a while, they've been on, let's say, your calls or listening to your education, et cetera. But no matter wherever they are in that spectrum, how do they view you, and helping them with that role? And we've got to become really comfortable at asking questions that start to uncover those things as directly as possible. So whenever someone seems interested, or they're talking about what they're going through, whether they're seeming interested, meaning they're talking directly to me about, potentially working with me, or asking about my services, et cetera, or they're seemingly interested in the sense that, I'll say it like this, maybe they seemingly would be interested because maybe they're challenged around some phase of growing their coaching business, or doing it full time, or some aspect along the way where there's frustration. As I engage in that conversation, I'm never too quick in jumping into a comp session or anything like that. I'm always very thorough, methodical, and when I say calculated, not in a bad way, but calculated in terms of just, very careful with my steps in terms of like, where are you at? What are you looking for? But what I also do is I always relate it back to, once we've done that, and if there's a conversation about, us working together, or them understanding like how I could help them potentially, obviously this relates to you and thinking about this when you're with this person, is I want to understand not only that need and timing, as I mentioned before, how badly do they want it and why now, but the other phase of that is like I said here, is now I want to understand, well, why are you considering working with a coach? Why would you consider, why are you looking into this? Why are you asking about my, what coaching's about, how much my cost is, things like that. How much does it cost to coach? You know what I mean? I want to understand that. What value do you see in working with someone like myself? How do you feel that would play a role? How do you feel that would help you achieve X, Y, and Z? It's asking those are direct questions, but they're not like, oh my God, hey, how much money do you make? You know what I mean? That's more of a direct question that might feel uncomfortable for someone right out of the gate. But this is just like, well, what are you seeing? And when you ask these questions, here's what I really want to highlight and for you to understand. When you ask these questions around not only the need and timing for what they're going for, but now for us, what has you interested in working with someone like myself? What I want you to understand is if they're answering these questions, it means that they're considering it. It means that they're thinking about it. It means that they're on some level between, okay, I'm just getting wind of maybe that I could do something with you, to I'm very serious about doing this based on whatever I know. I mean, somewhere along that spectrum. But if they're answering those questions and you ask that, why are you considering working with someone like myself? Or what has you in the place where you'd want to work with a coach like me? It means they're on that page. And if you don't ask some version of that, would you consider hiring me? Would you consider working with someone like myself that could help you this? Would that be something you'd be open to hearing more about? I'm giving you a lot of questions right now that you can use in your dialogue. Again, remember the call's recorded, so you can always go back to this as opposed to writing frantically. But either way, is until you ask that question, you don't know if they're on that page with you or not, that page of potentially buying from you. And I say potentially buying on purpose, right? Potentially hiring you. That's another whole page or another whole chapter, if you will, or maybe to make even better distinction, it's another whole book. Meaning, I want what I want really bad, and yes, the timing's now. Well, let's broach this different book now. It's like, hey, would you consider working with someone like myself? If they're willing to go open that book or even hold the book, now they're on that page. And what I'm emphasizing this and spending a little time on this is because if you're getting someone, or how about this, if you're even asking someone to do some form of a complimentary session discovery call without broaching that book and them actually picking it up or opening it up, so to speak, then what's happening is you're moving too fast. Because yes, they might have a really strong need, and yes, the time might be good, but until you've brought it up and until they've kind of answered it and broached that topic, well, now it's just like, it doesn't mean you can't help them. It doesn't mean they don't want your help. It doesn't mean that as a result of whatever you do next, let's say a complimentary session with them, it doesn't mean that they won't be like, wow, this is great, or like, yeah, could I work with you, or could I hire you? It doesn't mean that won't happen. It just means that if you rewind, and I said the number one thing we're thinking about is we want to understand where they are at, what they're thinking through this process. So if you're not asking that question, would you consider hiring me, or what has you, looking for a coach or something like that? In other words, going into that book, now we're assuming, now we're guessing, now we're wondering, now we're hoping most likely that they're in that spot. And what I'm saying is stop assuming, stop wondering. That's not what we do as a coach anyways, right? We want to clarify. So why would we be assuming that they'd be interested in hiring us? Well, why don't we ask them? That's what I'm asking you to do. And when you ask them, what happens is you get an honest space of where you're at. I could show you conversation after conversation. I do this with my mentoring group whenever it's applicable, or even a mentoring client. I'll show threads like on Facebook Messenger and or email that I have with clients, and I get to that spot. Before I invest a lot of time and a lot of energy with them. If we have, we develop a rapport. I understand where they're at. I ask them some questions, things like that, and then if the need and the timing are checking out, so to speak, and they really want it bad enough, I'd ask if they'd ever consider hiring me, or would they consider, working with me as their mentor coach, and and then it kind of goes from there. But if I get to the spot and asking that, and we get to the conversation and it's really honest, and they're just not there, or just the timing's not right for them, or it's just not something that they'd move forward with, I'm going to extract that from them, meaning that's what I'm going for. When we talk about helping people to a decision, one of the elements that we want to understand in terms of a final outcome is yes or no. That's what we're going for. That's what a decision is. And so when I say, hey, we want to understand where they are in their thought process along this journey, is ultimately to now tie it to the end goal, is helping them decide yes or no whether they'd want to work with us or not. And that yes or no can come at any point during this cycle, so to speak. And meaning it can come right away in the initial conversation, depending on where it goes, through multiple conversations via phone and or email, or at some point through or at the end of the complimentary session. People can decide, and it's our role. That's why we want to understand where they are along this journey. Is we want to get the sense, obviously, as early as possible of where they're at. And if at any point and or the first point where we start to feel them pulling back or hesitating or balking or slowing down or just questioning or hesitating, any of those situations where you can just feel it, our job is to clarify that right then and there. I'm not getting the sense, or I'm getting a feel that you might not be as into this pot as you seem, or I know you said you were interested, but I'm feeling some hesitation from you. What is that about? Tell me more about that. Or as much as you're saying yes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not. There's something. It feels like there's something missing. Talk to me about that. And you could be wrong, but the whole point is the second I get that. Pausing, slowing, hesitating, I'm clarifying it, because right then and there, if something's coming up and they don't want to move forward, I'm okay with that, because what I can do is I can get a no from them. And I want to extract that no, because that's part of my job, is to help them decide. And if I can get a no from them, that's good. And why is a no good? No is good because it's a decision. It's not a somewhere in the middle. Because somewhere in the middle is agony, and it's painful for us because we don't know where people are. It's like, will you marry me? Well, can I think about it a little bit? Like, can I get back to you? Yeah, go back after that. Like, how's that going to be? You're not going to sleep that night or that week or whatever. The whole point is, it's like yes or no. So if I can get them to a no, as early as possible, fantastic. And typically what happens is if I can clarify those hesitations or pauses along the way, what will happen is if I give them the exit door and make it okay and say, hey, you know what, if this isn't working for you, or for whatever reason you're really not genuinely interested in moving forward or talking more about this or hearing more about it, etc., I'm okay with that. The reason I ask, or the reason why, is because you asked me, or I noticed that you were going through X, Y, and Z, and it sounded like you're really, fired up to do something about it, and I help people like you. So where are you at? That's it. So you give them that exit door, you step back, and you say, here it is, basically. And that elicits honesty. Remember earlier I said people can't decide. People have challenges deciding. So we help them decide by, hey, here's the door. And what happens is, if they really want to leave, that's when they go, oh my, thank you so much. Yeah, that's when, if you will, the honesty comes out. Meaning I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. You know what? And then they'll give you a reason, and it may or may not even make sense, but it doesn't matter, because they've decided, and you're free of that just binding, when are they going to get back to me? And are they really interested? They're like, oh, thank you so much, but just, I'm going through a lot right now, and blah, blah, blah. And they just say whatever they say. And it's like, thank you very much. I wish you the best. And the great part is, ideally, if you've got them in your circle, meaning on your email list and or some type of a platform like a Facebook group, you're gonna be in front of them, right? And so you don't have to worry about them going away. And maybe at some other point there is interest, and you know what? They know the value, and it could turn into a client at that point when maybe the timing's better, because the reality is most likely the timing wasn't right. But if you're starting to see, that's how I'm starting to help people decide at any point along that journey. Any hesitations, I'm clarifying, and if you give them that door and then they take it, great. Now next you can put your time and energy to someone that's really considering and really serious about it. But if you give them that exit door and they really are interested, or maybe you're misreading, etc., what they're saying, that's why we're clarifying it, that hesitation, etc., that's when they go, oh no, I am interested, right? I call it like a takeaway. You take away a toy from a little kid, if they really want it, you're going to hear from them, right? But if they're not and they just move on to the next toy, then that wasn't really that important to them. Same thing here. If you're taking this opportunity, let's say, away from somebody and they really want it, they're going to say something. Well, wait a minute, no, and they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. And again, that goes back to the whole point of it is I got to know what they're thinking. And we don't want to be moving forward at any phase until we understand where they're at. And this is for the benefit of both parties. Obviously, the benefit of them, so they feel comfortable along the way, which is only going to allow them to create a more effortless and ease of buying decision down the road, whatever that is. And it's important for us to understand it because for us, mainly just our emotional energy, right? It's an emotional energy. Like I'm at a phase right now where I really understand it, so I don't go through those like, ugh, and those frustrations of just not knowing where people are and not people showing up for calls and people blowing me off and then, like I said, join the witness protection program and never hearing from them again and yeah, I'll get back to you and that just ridiculous game. And it's solvable through what I'm talking about here. But I remember back then, that's what was happening to me. And I'm just like, what the heck? And it's like, I started to hate people. Not really, but kinda, because it's just like, what's wrong? But it's not them, it's me. I didn't understand what was going on because I was assuming too much along the way. And what I'm helping you is the benefit for you of all this is in understanding that thought process along the way and helping them to decide, again, ultimate outcome, yes or no, is because I'm not investing my emotional energy. I never get too attached with somebody. Of course, I want to help them, and I'm fully invested in them if they're invested in themselves. They don't have to be invested in me. They don't have to care about me. All I want to see is do they have a real commitment to themselves and what they're going after, and how badly do they want that, and why now? And if why now, and then I bring that other book into play and say, either why are you considering looking into coaching with me or would you ever consider coaching with me? And now we start that conversation from that other book. Now we can start to move forward. But I've got to be really cognizant of along the way, where are they at in that process, all right? Now we're getting into the coaching. Let's say now we're getting into the complimentary session, where we're actually delivering that value, moving forward with that space, and then we're getting them towards the end. This is another space of really, as we go through this journey, now we're really starting to, knowing they're serious about that, because the only reason why they're there is because they're seriously considering hiring us. And now, again, the whole premise of the actual call is essentially about them, not only me helping them move forward, right? So you're helping them move forward with something, you're actually coaching with them. But in addition to that, and this is important to understand, I say this at the beginning of my complimentary sessions is, hey, here's a great opportunity for me to actually help you. I like to say, like, I've already treated like you've hired me, meaning I want to use our first, 40, 45 minutes, and I want to mentor you, or I want to coach you, in different applications for you, right? So I want you to move forward. And that at the end, it's also a good opportunity to get a feel for how we can work together. This way, at the end, not only will you have moved forward, but you'll be at a spot where you'll be able to decide whether, like, I want to work with Jeff, or for whatever reason, no, I don't. And if you see enough value in hiring me, at that point, we can go over the details, we can get you scheduled, we can go over the payment options and get that taken care of and move forward. And I say, how does that sound? And they're like, great. So see how I'm setting expectations? And it's all along the way. That's why I say it's this whole process. It's very calculated, it's very strategic, it's very methodical and thorough, but it's not like monotonous. See, there's a difference. Monotonous is just long and drawn out. This is it's thorough and detailed, and there's a big difference there because we're not missing things along the way. That's what I'm trying to show you there. And it's not painstaking either, because it's, again, the ultimate at the end of the day is it's saving you that time and that energy and mostly that frustration, and then that self-doubt of like, I suck, or like, what's wrong with me, or just like, I must be a horrible coach because these people aren't deciding and they're not hiring me. But it's actually really none of that. It's all that our job is, well, we're not doing the things I'm talking about here along the way, understanding their thought process, showing them the door where needed, to help them decide along the way. And then, of course, the other spots of, understanding where they're at along that continuum in terms of their decision. So when we're in the complimentary session, it's getting a feel for where they are, even throughout the call. How are you feeling so far? What are you seeing in terms of value? If we were to be working with me, I'm curious, can you start to see how this would pan out? Can you start to see, where your benefit could be in working with me, more than this? Start to see where they are. I can ask that. You could be 10 minutes into the call and we've gone over something and say, how's this working so far? What are you feeling so far? How are you feeling about our coaching together so far? Give them the feel, like what's been the most valuable thing for you so far? How are you? I'm curious how you might be starting to see how this would help you if we were to do this on a more regular basis. I start to say things, it's like, hey, when we're mentoring together or on our next call, I like to talk in the affirmative, like assuming the decision. That's just my style. You might not be comfortable with that. I'm trying to give you options. But when I say, when I'm on a call with somebody and we get to a point where maybe I've helped them decide on maybe their niche in terms of helping who with what specifically. Or maybe even if we haven't even got there yet, but we're getting to that phase, and I'll say, once I help you decide on, helping who with what specifically, on our next call, or what we'll be able to do after that when we work together is, then we'll be able to start to figure out, how we're going to market. We're going to come up with a marketing strategy, or we're going to create some structure around, blah, 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 your free offer. So see how I like to talk in the affirmative is almost like they've already decided. I like to have that confidence, but also show them like this is what we'll be doing together, so they can start to see the projected value in where our coaching relationship would go. Part of what I understand and what I want to pass on to each of you is that people hire, you've heard me say before, they buy based on value. And if they can't see very clearly throughout this process, right? And again, this is from the first second you come into their world, whether it's through a video or a spoken word from a podcast or a live event. It's from that very moment of that first interaction through till, let's say, the end of the complimentary call, that begins that building value process. And it can happen at all different paces and levels for people along the way. But at some point, if they don't see the value and how you'll be able to help them, or how by me working with you, wow, this is gonna be great, or like, oh my God, this is gonna be awesome, or I can completely start to see, or at least have hope that I can do this, or I have some confidence around this, or I feel like I've got this person on my side, now I've got this accountability, or this, oh my God, this person challenges me, right? These are all the things that I've started to understand of why people buy people like us, right? Why they buy a mentor or a coach or something like that. And so we want to start to understand, when we start to see that and understand that, not just assuming it, but as they start to say things and we clarify that along the way, once we start to understand that they see that, now their value is being built. Now they're most likely to hire you because at that point, there's a value there. And when there's value there and they really want it, that's when they're not just willing to allow something like cost or whatever for that matter, no support from a spouse or anything for that matter, time or situation, if you will, get in the way of working with you because they really believe you can actually help them. So now as we start to come to the conclusion of this, again, the whole point along the way, understanding their thought process, and any hesitation, any type of balking, etc., giving them the exit door, so to speak. Remember, deciding is yes or no. It's black and white. It's not just, I'll think about it. It's yes or no. So when we give them that potential exit door, maybe they leave, great, that's easy, great, thank you very much. If not, we're moving forward. But now when we get to that end of that call, the biggest thing at this point is now we're at the point of decision. And I remember, where like even when I was a personal trainer and then when I started coaching, and before I started really understanding this, it was almost like the dreaded part. I remember doing complimentary calls and I would just like let them linger on, and it's like getting 5 minutes to 10 minutes to the hour, and then 5 minutes to the hour, and now it's like the hour's up. And thank God I didn't have anything after that because I just was avoiding the end of the decision, and sometimes it can be scary, but I want to help, pull that away and recognize like this is the point where it all culminates to a decision, and that's what we're going for. And so now before you get into prices or any of the details, you really want to get to the point of really understanding like where are they at in their decision to hire you or not. And you can simply just use that question. I want you to have like a go-to question that you're comfortable with. You can call it a closing question. And a closing question should be a close-ended question, meaning it elicits a yes or no response, not open-ended like, so what do you think? How do you feel about hiring me? It doesn't mean that you can't ask something like that, but at some point after, even if you ask that, you've got to be able to ask, at this point, where are you at in your decision for hiring me or not? Or that, again, that's open-ended, but it's just like, are you ready to hire me and move forward? Tell me more about that. Or at this point, do you see the value in working with me or hiring me as your coach? That's the close-ended question. Do you see the value? At this point, are you ready to hear more of the details of how you can hire me? We can get you in the schedule and move forward. That's a close-ended question. And that's where, again, that's if they're like, oh my God, yes, I so want to do this. Or, yep, I want to hear about the prices, but I want to do this. People always will protect themselves in some ways from prices. Just know that sometimes people are, even at this point, if they're ready to go in their mind, like, oh my God, I want this. But, they don't want to show too much excitement, or whatever reason, they're just like, all right, well, yeah, I got to hear about the prices first, or, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, you can get a feel whether they really want to do this or not at that point. So should be an enthusiastic or some version of an enthusiastic, non-hesitating yes. Like at this point, are you ready to hear about, the details of how we can move forward and hire me as your coach? And they're like, yeah, let's do that. That's what we're looking for, any higher version of that. But now here, again, if they're like hesitating or they're pausing or like, yeah, or like, well, you know what? Yeah, I do. And now they're already starting to make excuses. They're already starting to say, yeah, but I know finances are tight right now, but yeah, I definitely want to hear more. Again, the better you do with the previous qualification process earlier on before the commentary call, I will tell you that's going to alleviate like 99% of everything I'm going over right now. Because I will tell you, like, I can't remember the last time I've gotten like a money objection or just a BS objection of like time or whatever. I mean, the only things I've gotten is just like, I've got to talk to my significant other about it, which is fine. That's certainly understandable. But at that point, I start to clarify, like, great, so where are you at though? Like, are you decided, like, what do you anticipate or what are you going to be talking with them about? And it's just more of, at that point, it's just like, yeah, no, I want to do this. It's just, before I invest X amount of $1,000 or whatever it is, we talk about things, etc. You know what I mean? But I just go beyond it and understand, like, great, I want to make sure it's not just this smoke screen and them just like being able to avoid deciding. And it's more of, no, I've already decided, but this is like, I'm in a mutual respective relationship and this is just what we do. And it's like, awesome. Then we come up with a plan of action. We schedule their first call. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens after something like that. It's not a smoke screen. And so if there's some hesitations, but we do it before we go over the prices. I don't want to go over my prices with somebody or any of the details and how it all works until I know that they're ready to go. And sometimes people might be like, well, yeah, I want to hire you, but I can't say yes because I need to know like how it all works and how much it costs. And it's like, okay, great. So, but other than that, it sounds like you're excited about, doing this with me or hiring me. And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. So just clarifying those pieces. You don't have to get too hard on this part. It's just, I'm trying to show you, it's just like before you move on and you get into that logical space of pricing, again, you want to have that final clarity of like, hey, do you want to do this or not? Again, helping them decide yes or no. And then after you go over the prices, if at that point you're still getting some resistance, at that point, really, the only thing you should, if anything, need to work through is just figuring out how they'll pay for it. Meaning, if you pay in full, or if you allow them to break it up into a few different payments, etc. But that, to me, that's the only thing that you should ever have to deal with after you go over how it all works and the pricing, etc. If you're getting like, oh my God, well, let me think about this, or let me go back and let me run this by, these people, or, the committee, whatever it is, you've got to, at this point, start to understand what they're thinking. Again, remember I said all along the way, and odds are if you're getting this at the end, it means most likely you didn't take enough time to understand where they're at along the way, or taken too big of steps before you've found out again with this huge gaps in between there, so to speak. And so now it's like we want to understand. It's like, I can appreciate you, wanting to think about this. I'm just to clarify, just to help me understand a little bit better where you are. I'm just curious, what are you thinking, or what is it that you're looking to think about? Or tell me more about where you're at, or I'm not quite getting the sense that this is something for you. Tell me more about that. Elaborate on that, or maybe it's like, well, there's a lot going on in my world right now and things like that, and I might be like, yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's exactly why we're talking, is because there's a lot going on in your world and it's distracting you from moving forward with X, Y, or Z, right? I mean, I call them out on some things like that. So help me to understand where you're at, or help me to understand what you're thinking, and if to take some pressure off. Again, this is me helping them decide. Is that, hey, listen, you know what? I just want to help you. You can use this phrase. I want to help you to a comfortable decision. Either way, yes or no. Yes, Jeff, I want to hire you as my mentor coach. Or like, you know what? For whatever reason, this doesn't work for me right now. Like, that's all that matters to me, is I want to help you create a comfortable decision. So I'm just trying to get an honest feel, a genuine feel of where you're really at right now, so I can help you either way. And I want to say, as much as I'd love to work with you and I know I can help you, if you don't hire me, that's okay. That's okay. Tell me what you're thinking. You see how I break it all down? And I'm going for that yes or no. I want that yes or no, because I know that as soon as they hang up that phone, if they have not committed to me on some level, anything mostly below them actually paying me, or some version of the only other way it would work is if they're the spouse thing, where they're going to talk it over with their spouse, but I still get them in my schedule. They've said, yes, I'm going to hire you. Yes, it's going to go well. I just got to run it by them, or we just got to figure out, what account we're going to pull it from, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They're open about things. They're not hiding things. There's no hesitation. It's a very open, honest dialogue. So there's nothing to worry about there per se. But if I know once they hang up that phone, if I haven't gotten that commitment from them, they're gone. They're done. And just take that as an absolute. It doesn't mean always, but if it's going to be always, because realistically it's going to be like always, then now is your one last opportunity to really understand where they're at. And the only way to do that, so you feel comfortable about it, mostly so that you don't feel like you're intruding or prying or pushy or becoming this like, just what the heck, like hire me and what's going on, and it just becomes this really weird, non-breathing, shallow conversation. It's just like, hey, my whole thing is just like, I want to help you get to where you want to go, but I can't do that until you decide whether you want to work with me or not. And I'll tell you straight out, like, if you hire me, that would be fantastic. I know I can assist you, but if for whatever reason it's not working out for you, or you just don't see the value, or something's going on that you can't even talk about right now because you don't even know what it is, then that's okay. But I want to help you to that decision either way. So tell me where you're at. Tell me honestly what you're thinking. And just shut up after that and let them start talking and start coaching them a little bit. And what's going to happen is after that, if you create that space, is you're going to open up that space where they start to be honest. They're going to start to ask more things, or, get some things answered. Or they'll just be like, I don't know what it is, but I'm not ready for this. And here's what's going to happen is, you don't leave the call in the gray area. Will you marry me? Let me get back to you on that. That's the worst gray area you can be. When you help them decide yes or no, yes, great, woohoo, great, here's how much it costs, what's your credit card number, paid, now I've got a client. Or the other version is like, whatever reason, no, it's just not working for me right now. Hey, listen, I wish you the best. We're gonna stay in touch because you're on my email, blah, blah, blah. And good, done, next. I'm either moving forward with that person or not. That's the value of that. And us taking the time throughout this whole process, as you can see, alleviates those challenges at the end. It makes it easier and less anxiety producing for us. But then also it helps people to decide at the end, and then we either move forward or we don't. And that's the best case scenario that we can be in.